Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our April luncheon today. My name is Anyone. I'm the president for Southern Alberta section this year. And a little bit of logistics beforehand. The washroom is back there in the corner, and if there's any emergency event, please follow the exit sign on both sides. So as mentioned previously, this year I would like to do something different for our reconciliation efforts. And instead of reading out the land acknowledgement, I'll be sharing some Indigenous art and artist stories. So as you can see behind you, this is art by the art collective called Tina Guyami, which means Deer Road. And they are made up of a mother-son duo that's called Helena Cardinal and Seth Cardinal, the Dodging Horse. And they grew up on their family's ancestral land on the Tuscany Nation and was relocated back in 2014 due to the construction of Southwest Calgary Road. This life-changing event has been driving force in their creative work. And what you can see here are a couple of their works at the exhibition called Agency. And their generational expression and practice advocates for a future where self-determination, self-strengthening, and sovereignty are respected and upheld. Through their powerful and generous voices, these two artists transmit crucial knowledge and narratives, and their impact extends beyond the art world, reaching wider networks and fostering deep community engagement. At heart, their work is rooted in a profound emphasis on love, healing, and meaning-making. I also want to thank Jack Mason, who brought this artist to my attention. Thank you. And please feel free to let me know if there are any other artists or Indigenous art that I would like me to share in the future. Also, I'd like to thank our sponsor today, which is WSP. A round of applause for WSP. Our next lecture will be on May 13th, presented by SL. And we also have a workshop in June, on June 10th, for floating bus stops. Details will be coming soon to your inbox, and stay tuned and save the date. And there are a couple of things from the ITE Canada as well. On April 29th, we have a webinar from transportation and affordability, and as well as the ITE Canada conference in Halifax this year between June 1st to 4th. Please make sure to register online. So about today's presentation, we have Shak, Sarai here to present you on the history of LRT delivery in Calgary. A bit of background for Shak. He is a seasoned rail transit professional with nearly 20 years of experience across operations, maintenance, and major LRT projects in Calgary and beyond. His portfolio includes the First Street Southwest Station refurbishment, West LRT, Westbrook Operations Control Center, and the 7th Avenue refurbishment. He's also contributed to the Edmonton's Valley Line sublease and the Vancouver's Canada Line. Shak has spent 5 years overseeing the traction power assets at Calgary Transit before joining the Green Line team, where he has spent the past 6 years supporting technical development, and as well as procurement and operational readiness. He currently serves on the Green Line corporate liaison team, helping prepare Calgary Transit for successful operation and maintenance of the Green Line. So without further ado, please welcome Shak.
We'll continue on the introduction because I like talking about myself a little bit. So if you are there, let me break up your legs here a bit. So I was lucky enough to start my career in about 2005. I never set up to be a train guy, but here I am. So I've been extremely fortunate, very grateful to all my employers along the way. I've worked for Canada Construction, I've worked for SNC Lavalin, Hatchwell McDonald, and most recently with the city of Calgary. I'm also really thankful to that thing that runs through our city right now called the C train. It's giving me opportunities to work on trains and traction power and OCCs and maintenance facilities and everything in between. So I consider myself very fortunate that my career development has followed the development of the LRT system so closely here. So as we talked about, I'm currently sitting in the corporate liaison team, so it's a bit of a buffer team between the Green Line project office that's tasked with delivering the Green Line, and then myself and the corporate liaison team, Vidora, Corey, Madhuri Sira, and Robert Shaw, we're sitting between, and we're basically helping to represent operational services to the project. So such a big project, we're here basically representing. Before doing that, I was actually embedded right into the Green Line team. I was heading up the development of the operations and maintenance side, as well as the development of the new light rail vehicle, which is sort of the part two of the presentation here. So what I want to share with you, just a bit of a history of the development of Calgary's C train system. And then the part two will be the fun part of looking at the new Green Line low floor trains. Okay. Okay, so the work began on the original red line. It dated as far back as actually 1966. I had to look this up. There was a group by the name of Simpson and Curtin Limited. They had a proposal for a 32-kilometer grade separated heavy commuter rail system. And that recommendation that came from them in 1966 actually kicked off land acquisition and right-of-way protection back in 1966. In 1975, there was two additional studies that looked at that were completed that looked at LRT instead of a heavy commuter rail system. They were immediately accepted by a council. However, watch this story. Financial support from the province was withheld pending a further independent review of capital and O&M costs. So history doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it does rhyme really well. So several parallel options were analyzed, including a parallel busway. A lot of these things, though, resulted in some heavy different capital costs and O&M costs. So at the end of the day, even the provincial's independent review recommended in 1977 that LRT was endorsed, and council accepted it that very same day. So construction also started much the same way that Green Line is starting today. So I know we've heard a little bit about the advanced LRV procurement. I'll talk about that in a bit here, but it's the same approach that was taken back in 1979 as well too. The LRVs were procured in advance, as was the MSM, to provide a place again to test, commission, build the actual trains. The vehicle was procured in advance to reduce a lot of that risk and uncertainty with designing the infrastructure around it. So you guys know, we travel the world, trains all generally look the same, but you get into the meat and the guts of their design and the way they interact with the infrastructure can be very different. So the procurement was done, and unlike Metrolinx and a lot of the sort of sexier projects these days in Canada, it was done with multiple construction contracts. So this whole singular DBF, singular design build thing, it's a relatively modern notion. We'll get into some of it in Calgary's history as well too, but it's not the only way to develop these projects. There was also a unique aspect of it here too, where the construction industry did not have expertise. We started beginning to insource it within the city of Calgary. So one sort of area was the city of Calgary electric system. So we used to have our own internal electric utility before electric deregulation that created NMAX. There's other aspects. So NMAX worked on the city of Calgary Electric, sorry, and NMAX worked on the systems. So power, signals, comm, all the things that made the train go. And then the second part of it was really around the light rail vehicles. So it's not every day. You can't go to state. You can't now. To go to a program to become an electromechanic and develop yourself into working on light rail vehicles. But a lot of those things didn't exist. So this was stuff that the city of Calgary tended to insource. So basically the LRT construction then, it started in about 1979 and it commenced on Monday, May 25th, 1981 at 1 p.m. with the introduction of LRT service to Calgary. Okay. The blue line followed very quickly thereafter in 1985, adding sort of the scope that you see in front of you here. Again, additional LRV procurement, advancements of the Haysboro storage facility, but that same general feel of doing a multiple construction contract. So stations were done separate from civils, civils was done separate from systems, track was all done separately as well too. And the city became sort of a de facto integrator, but they took that experience that they had from the south leg and constructing the south leg and continued on into the northeast. The reason the Northwest wasn't picked first, and if you can look through some old Calgary Herald archives, it's actually quite interesting. The community through Sunnyside and along 9A Street was very vehemently opposed to having any sort of mass transit system there, to the point where there's old posters, and I wish I could find the old one, but literally threatening sort of almost guerrilla warfare against the construction efforts that was happening on the red line at the time here. So again, probably big change on this one. The map's a little bit wrong, but 8th Street ceased to be the terminus in the blue line and actually got extended out to 10th Street. And those of us who were roughly my age, 40 some odd plus, remember a 10th Street LRT platform, which was about this wide, with just a bit of stairs on it before we actually ended up building West LRT. Shortly thereafter, in preparation for the Olympics in 1988, the 15th Winter Games to be held in Calgary from February of 1988. The red line was extended from downtown to University. So again, 5.8 kilometers, 5 stations with an LRV procurement, and again, multiple construction contracts with a lot of insourcing, with vehicles being done by the City of Calgary and systems being done by City of Calgary Electric at that time. Okay, so we got really, really good at building LRT very quickly. Then we hit a bit of a lull. So in the 90s, we kind of slowed down. The Olympics had just happened. We got all this money to build all this great LRT infrastructure. During the 90s, we had a big economic slowdown and significantly reduced funding from provincial and federal governments. There just wasn't that political will to continue with these projects anymore. And so from about 1990 to 1999, we lost about a decade there. And there's a lot of institutional knowledge lost at that time, either from folks aging out of the workforce at that time, going on to consulting, going into contracting, helping to found some of the consulting companies or back into the consulting companies as well. So it was sort of to the city of how do we gain that momentum again, and how do we regain some of that institutional knowledge? And you guys might have heard that the Green Line, for example, has hired what's called a delivery partner, so a bunch of consultants to basically be indistinguishable from the City of Calgary project office and the staff there. This isn't a new notion, and the city's actually done this before. And so at the time, the city put out an RFP roughly around 1999. They're basically calling for joint proposals to manage with the city, hand in hand as partners, the expansion of not only LRT infrastructure, but a lot of the transportation infrastructure that was being built within the City of Calgary. There was a joint venture that had formed, YYC.T. This was made up of a lot of different consulting companies at the time. Some of you guys will recognize some of these names, depending on how many gray hairs you have. A lot of them have been bought out or disappeared in the meantime or been rebranded. So Stanpeg, obviously still around, SNC Lavalin, now Atkins Realis. I believe Agra and Reed Crowther eventually became EarthTech, which became UMA, which or maybe ACOM, somebody's going to correct me in a bit here. But yeah, anyway, basically this joint venture came together. So it was a mixture then of consulting staff and City of Calgary staff to sort of get the best of both worlds to help push the project management forward, get that strategic development, and help fill that gap that 90s had created. And there's a lot of us, myself included, a few folks in the audience too, that got their career starts here on either on internships or otherwise. So this joint animal then was collectively called the Transportation Project Office, and it reported to the City of Calgary Land Use and Mobility Group at the time, which wasn't exactly the transportation department, but covered all land use and mobility matters. Okay, so the Transportation Project Office, it had a pretty big remit in terms of major capital transportation projects. Fundamentally, it was pretty much all of them. The city was not in a position where we are today, where we're developing a lot of the projects in-house or doing some of the planning or even managing some of that through public spaces delivery and through infrastructure services as a group. This basically was the entire portfolio. So you may recall down by Chinook Center, Glenmore Elbow, Fifth Street is one of the biggest projects that all used to be at-grade intersections. And TPO at the time was one of the took on that project GE5 to create what it looks like now with the current arrangement that's there. So huge portfolio and fairly successful in sort of giving the city a shot in the arm to get back into the game, get into this project development and be ready for money as it's coming along. So what's interesting is in 2005, the transportation department, we went through a bit of a sustainability study to talk about how to continue to evolve and not have to rely necessarily fully on the private sector and how it relates to Calgary Transit, Calgary Roads at the time, and overall transportation department. And this then became an evolution in the transportation project office. It then became TI, that sort of branded version of it that lasted about 9 months. And then we turned into the City of Calgary Business Unit, which was transportation infrastructure, which also spun off West LRT, which spun off Green Line, which spun off infrastructure services. And the only reason it's not a direct spin-off, but a lot of the DNA, a lot of the people, some folks in the audience too, have come sort of down that line through the projects as well there too. For example, West LRT as a project office, they were spun off from transportation infrastructure, simply to deal with some of the procurement nuances of conflicts of interest. A lot of the TPO staff were working for Stantec, for SNC Lavalin, myself included at the time. So we weren't allowed to touch anything West LRT, but we also wanted to make sure we showed, the market that we had a suitable buffer between our consulting teams and our city partners. So the project office got spun off, and then they subsequently went into their design build procurement as well too. So the YYC.T joint venture, it ended nominally in 2011. There were still some folks that came back in terms of independent contractors and all of that stuff, but I think pretty much all the vestiges of that group are either retired now, or the EITs that were there and students are here. Probably one of them as well too, myself, have moved on further in our careers as well. Okay, and then obviously with some of that kickstart, some of that juice being added from the delivery partner with TPO, we got started and rolled all this right into TI and projects going forward. So you have South Phase 1 opening up in 2001, the Northwest LRT Extension to Dalhousie in 2003, South Phase 2 in 2004, the extension to Westwinds, we'll take a look at it there in a little bit more detail in 2007. We did dabble a little bit on that extension to Dalhousie with some scopes for design build. I'll speak to that in a bit here as well too. But generally, these were all done very vanilla, very similar to the way the original lights were built, of having separate stations contracts, separate major structures contracts, having stations contracts that were separate there in the city, managing that whole integration piece. Okay, and then we just kept going. We got the Northwest Extension to Crowfoot, the extension to Martindale and Saddle Ridge. They got really cute with the acronyms at that point. West LRT, the extension to Rocky Ridge, Tuscany as well too. So the key message here is again, that scope breakdown never really changed. The city was able to rapidly roll out a lot of these projects here because we either had pre-designs sitting there ready on the shelf, so 30% design, pre-approved alignments ready to go, and we had that robust scope breakdown that we just kept repeating. So we created an element that was very, very repeatable and predictable for contractors that were working on it, as well as with commercial terms that were very repeatable and consistent that contractors were used to. So again, the only time we kind of dabbled outside of that was the extension to Dalhousie, to Brentwood, and then the extension to West LRT, which had design build elements on it as well. So what did that scope split look like? Sorry, guys, it's a bit small. So I'll try to walk you through it here left to right. Maybe the folks online will have a little bit more ease to kind of take a look at it there. But from left to right, we basically have the blue boxes here. I'll start with those. Those are kind of the Calgary Transit sacrosanct scopes that we always had of city operating and maintaining the line, always kind of purchasing light rail vehicles. So the projects would have funding for those LRVs, but Calgary Transit would be ultimately there to purchase them, commission them, test them, get the garages expanded, all that fun stuff. So what we had is sort of the first sort of tranche of just one left to right here. Scope was track. And so we always just had, your PNRs, your A&B rails providing that track scope of work. As we got a little more sophisticated, we started dabbling in owner supplied materials, so running rails, special track work, etc. But effectively, the first time we did it, it was like turnkey track. Go buy everything, go install everything. And then by the time we did the Tuscany extension, that turned into we'll buy everything for you. We just need an installer. The systems is kind of the next bucket as well too. That also evolved quite a bit. And that evolved a lot tied to, we were fortunate, we had City of Calgary Electric. We maintained that relationship with City of Calgary Electric as they became NMAX and McKnight Power Services Corporation. And they were continuing with the system scope. So traction power signals, comm, a lot of areas where a lot of agencies had a lot of challenges in bringing in talent or creating contractors. We almost had one built in and we owned a pretty significant share in them. They've long since now left, unfortunately left the business of rail systems, but they're a great partner to help us continue to develop out the LRT system. The next bucket really was the at-grade guideways and structures, elevated guideways as well too, and structures. And then the sort of the civils and the roadworks, interchanges, those elements as well too. So those were the very vanilla bread and butter work that could be done very predictably. Didn't matter that it was a part of a rail transit project. It was just doing road work at the end of the day. And that's kind of how we broke those out. And then lastly, it would be, potentially franchise utility works or utility works for either relocation and site servicing. And then that last bucket was really around the stations. And so the stations from a design and from a construction perspective were bucketed that way. And honestly, when you look at the entire sort of 46-year history of building the LRT, it's kind of been the scopes that we've been working with and continuing to build around. And it's been around a well-developed contractor space and a well-developed market that's understood how we like to build these things. Okay, so we'll dive a little bit into the Northeast LRT extension just to help illustrate that. So this was the sort of the two images you see in front of you here, sort of the before and after. So the Northeast LRT extension, it was the first extension since 1985 to the Northeast line. This one only consisted of one station, McKnight Westwinds. It was opened in 2007. And it also included a park and ride, two utility buildings, the maintenance and storage facility, an interchange, including a flyover structure. So that would be the flyover that takes you from eastbound McKnight to northbound 36th Street, including the road twinning of 36th Street as well too. And then also an LRV procurement, which those of us who were working on the project never even knew existed, but it was funded by the same bucket of money on it as well too. So most everything here was procured, and I'll get into this a little bit, as a design bid build. So, standard, construction format specifications, standard tender drawings. Nobody's getting surprised by any crazy commercial terms or design build that or design build this type of thing, and very, very predictable and straightforward. The only exception was the maintenance and storage facility. I'll tie on that a bit here. And then we actually were even bolder. Not only did we have multiple contractors, we had multiple designers at the same time. And I do remember getting my start and actually very thankful for it. Weekly design coordination meetings between all of these disciplines. So big room, everybody bringing their issues, their interface issues at any given time to that big room. We break off into smaller groups as needed for, stations and systems or systems and track and structures, whatever we needed to do. But it was very, quote unquote, doable. We had a sort of a repeat process, predictable scope again. So we had S&C doing the track. The stations were being done by GDC at the time. UMA was doing the roadworks for this particular piece, as well as the McKnight 36th Street interchange. The MSF, the Bowen Maintenance Facility, was being done by Stantec and LTK at the time. The underpass was being done by Dillon as a structure for Dillon Consulting, and then the systems again by NMAX. And then not to belabor the point, but yeah, so PNR did the track construction as a design bid build. Ellis Dawn did the station construction as a general contractor, design bid build, very vanilla stuff. Roadworks in this upgrade was done by Standard General as a design bid build. McKnight 36th Street interchange, that structure itself was done by Graham as a design bid build. And the MSF, this was the only one we did a little bit differently. We did this as a construction management because you don't build a garage every day. And in order to maximize sort of value for the public, we wanted to make sure we sort of sequentially tendered everything. So what I mean by that is we didn't finish the design. We got into sequential tendering to help control the scope. We also wanted to control some of the uncertainty around a lot of specialty equipment. So buying things like train washes and cranes and turntables and sanding systems and vacuum systems, all these specialized pieces of kit to maintain and operate an LRV. You don't buy those every day. They're not off the shelf. A lot of them, they're kind of custom and built. So we went with a construction management approach with our designer Stantec. And as things got tendered, we adjusted the design to integrate and incorporate them. And then the 36th Street underpass, that was just an extension fundamentally on the interchange as well, with Graham doing that, and then NMAX doing the systems construction side as well too. This was also a bit unique. NMAX was always engaged as a design builder. They were already the maintainer of the system, and so they already had an advantage of knowing what transit wanted to operate and maintain. And so they took more of a design build aspect. So we were able to standardize a lot of systems elements because the city wasn't prescribing them. And Max would go in basically to buy, construct the same stuff we've had all the time. So it was a very, very positive outcome actually for having sort of a pseudo arms reach group that was helping to deliver such an important part of the LRT as well. Okay, things we made sure we broke out of the scope. So OCC, the Operations Control Center, the nerve center. These folks are dealing with things with the day-to-day service, and they have a problem with every day that ends in a Y. So there's always something going on in terms of service, outages, all of that. We never wanted to introduce any of those large capital projects into the control room. So largely the project team or Calgary Transit themselves would go in with a scalpel, not necessarily a chainsaw, to make any changes to the control room. And so that's something we learned very, very quickly and early on, that impact the control room, you're going to impact the day-to-day operations. And if operations kicks up your, $100 million contractor, you're going to be seeing delays on that side as well too. So we always made a bit of a deliberate firewall. So we didn't expose transit to the pains of the project, nor the project to the pains of an operation. Okay, and then on the LRV side, touched on this as well too. We've always had Calgary Transit operating and maintaining the LRVs, even during testing and commissioning. So we have our own operating rules, our own testing procedures, etc. So even though contractors were doing the work for us, they were working effectively on Calgary Transit property under our operators. So things became a lot more predictable. It was usually a lot of the same folks helping us out, Mike McGee and Dave LaRose, and the same training officers driving the trains that knew where the bugbears are, where the issues are, and how to help us kind of work through them as well there too. So LRVs and those interfaces were very, very, very well managed and very low risk to us. Okay, so why did we do West LRT differently? Well, fundamentally, you saw we just kept repeating the same sort of program again and again with design bid build contracts. We started getting more and more sophisticated with them in terms of scope breakdown. But the negative of it was we started to take a lot longer to do them. So now we were doing things like owner supplied materials, but you had to go procure those, and you had to have those ready before you got your contractor going. So West LRT fundamentally was an exercise in doing it as quickly as possible. And that's what the challenge was laid down. So it's a total of a 5-year program. And that key priority, the reason we went design build, and hopefully we illustrated a little bit, was to accelerate. And so we did advanced land acquisition. We did a really rapid pre-design report as well too, to kind of set the concept for the alignment. There was a bunch of enabling works projects that we said, these can be done quickly. And it's not the right risk for somebody who's going to come build us a train line. So let's go deal with them ourselves. So this is like the TELUS World of Science, the relocation of Ernest Manning High School, the 69th Street Arcade, the transmission lines of Sarcee Trail, Sarcee and 17th, Shak and Point Golf Course. So these are all things that look like they were part of West LRT, but they were part of a completely separate projects as well too. The other thing we did a little bit too was a little bit nutty, but this was a great another extension of our OCC philosophy of not exposing that contractor to the risks of an operation. Was the block west of 10th Street, 2 blocks actually, block AB as we refer to them, where downtown West Kirby Station currently reside, didn't exist. So we were actually building West LRT west of 11th Street. It was looking like an LRT system. Meanwhile, we had 2 blocks of untouched road fundamentally that was sitting there right there. Again, intentional, because that was our tie-in point to Calgary Transit, and to basically we created a physical buffer where you can go test, commission, do whatever you want at the end of the day. And so we delivered that project completely separately under the 7th Avenue refurbishment piece as well too. Helped us tap into some other funding as well, but effectively we were able to do that block AB extension, that really hard work, that very slow work of dealing with stakeholders like the Kirby Center, doing a lot of that embedded track work, building something on a curve as well to dealing with the road implications on 11th Street and 9th Street and 10th Street, and planning all of our work around outages to the Blue Line terminus as well too. We didn't saddle our design builder with that problem. We took that problem on. They never saw it. They never had to deal with it. As far as they were concerned, they were building us an LRT line west of 11th Street. The only thing that was a bit funny was the power wasn't quite all ready to go yet, so we had to push our trains a block over 11th Street. So it's a fun little bit there, but it was intentional. I'll just keep that segregated again. But we were able to get our LRVs out there as well to do testing and commissioning while we were still doing some last minute construction on the block A and B downtown West Kirby LRT stations as well. Okay, so yeah, we had the actual West LRT design build scope then. It had about, almost 9 kilometers of LRT in it, 3 kilometers of it at grade, about 2 kilometers elevated, about another 3 sort of trench tunnel portals. So literally we wanted to learn about any type of LRT construction. That was the project. We went up, down, around, below, above, whatever, all those little versions thereof. It included all the LRT systems. It included 6 stations, 2 parking rides, the interchange. And so we basically got everybody doing highest and best use in terms of scope. What are they good at? What are they going to deliver the fastest and most effectively? So it's funny, I just want to dive into this as well too. So the West LRT, the design build organization was very, very similar in terms of how we developed LRT extensions even prior to that. And so at the end of the day, the West LRT project office that came, some of its DNA traced back to TI, Transportation Infrastructure and TPO. They hired an owner's engineer. So Hatch Mont McDonald is the firm now. Hatch and Mont McDonald as 2 separate entities. They put together the procurement to hire SNC Lavalin, SNC Lavalin Constructor Specific, to be more specific about it. And SNC Lavalin actually set up 4 JVs. And these joint ventures were lined up pretty much identical to how we used to break down the scopes. The big advantage was as SNC Lavalin as a private entity could take the risk of doing design and construction at the exact same time. So they were able to compress that whole time frame, but they broke it down exactly the same way. So SNC Lavalin and A&B Rail were the SLT joint venture, really creative SNC Lavalin track. SLE was the SNC Lavalin NMAX joint venture, which was doing all of the systems work. SLG was SNC Lavalin Graham. So that was doing basically like a lot of the utilities, heavy roads, heavy structures, in that part. And then lastly, SLC, which was SNC Lavalin in Canada, was doing all of the stations and the utilities. So again, that same scope breakdown, it's just a matter of who you're transferring risk to. What are you really trying to buy? At the end of the day, are you buying schedule? Are you buying complexity? But it's the same vanilla Lego bucket parts that are coming together to make your train system all together there. So I'm rattling through it quick because I want to show you guys the trains as well too here. But the key message is what I wanted you guys to take away from this on the delivery side of LRT projects is they're made up of the same constituent parts at the end of the day. That scope and risk allocation, you got to really send it to the person who's going to best manage it. And we were able to learn that over 46 years to say, we're the contractors, who's going to be doing track, who's going to be doing systems, stations, structures, all of that kind of stuff, and send them the risks. They're the best at building those things, and those are the ones that they should have. Managing interfaces, super, super important. We got kind of lazy at it by the time we were doing LRT extensions because we had done it so many times that it became the same scope interfaces, the same holes in the design, same, two things to blend together of understanding how to schedule these things. But it's really important when you're starting kind of that greenfield approach to manage those interfaces between the consultants, between the contractors, or if you don't want to manage those interfaces, you're going to pay somebody else to do it, like a design builder. Okay, so focus on the highest and best use of your resources. Again, tying right back to it. Calgary Transit was a great operator and maintainer. They're great at buying trains. Carry on. Graham, you were great at building bridges. Carry on. PNR, great at building track. Carry on. So those are the things. It's don't try to force those marriages of scope and risk allocation of, hey, would you like to try out X? Contractors aren't in that business, and neither should owners be. That mature understanding of scope that was required, I think that's the key thing. I think that's the thing that the city cycles through once in a while, and we've naturally cycled through it a couple of times. It's just getting that mature understanding of those interfaces, the actual scope. And you've seen it happen in the 90s. There was a bit of a gap. Some could argue it's kind of happening a little bit potentially right now with Green Line as well too, but we'll pick it right back up again and continue there. And I think just for those folks in the audience, building some of that institutional knowledge, participating in things like this. Thank you for that. Building that resiliency within your consulting teams, within operating organizations to ride out those pieces is very, very important. And then picking the right scope and right procurement to figure out the problem you're trying to solve. If you're trying to get the lowest price, then get out there with something certain. Design, bid, build, right? If you want to build a bridge, here's the bridge. Send them drawings, send them specs for that. You want that complexity piece, you're going to be paying for a construction manager to take on some of that risk. You want speed, you want somebody else to take the interface risk, go to design build. So. All right, and now for something completely different. So I'm rattling through it really quickly, knowing we're kind of short on time here. But just jump into here from my past, just on the Green Line LRV. So you guys are looking at it right now. We'll jump into this in a little bit of detail, but effectively the big difference is we've gone for a low floor LRT. Why are we doing that? We'll get into it a little bit more detail in a bit here, but again, it's really just lowering the station platforms. That's kind of the key part. It's helping the urban integration element the most from a not just accessibility perspective. They're accessible, but just differently accessible. And what I mean by that, and we'll see it in an image here, is the toes of the ramps for these stations when you're going up a meter and you're having to feather out for folks that have reduced mobility or mobility challenges for ramps, you end up taking up a pretty significant amount of space. And you don't need to go any further than 7th Avenue to see how long those 4-car train blocks can kind of basically go right from city block to end. Whereas those low floor platforms, you've got a lot less area. There are some trade-offs, and we'll get into some of those trade-offs as well too on the vehicle design that change that level of accessibility on there too. So the other big reasons of why we went with low floor, everybody's doing it. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot more mature market. We're not just picking up like we did in 1978, 79, calling up Dusseldorf, Germany and saying, here, Siemens, Dual, what do you have? Because nobody's invented this thing yet. We're now playing catch up. So we have a lot more to pick from in terms of approach here. We did the same thing with the Green Line LRV procurement. We wanted to do an advanced procurement to reduce the variability again, and to sort of narrow down the potential solutions for trains that would potentially come in. So we looked at it originally and we were looking at it if you could have bought the train and the infrastructure together, but you have a very real possibility of a great infrastructure manufacturer or a great infrastructure company, but maybe a lousy rolling stock, or vice versa. You could have great rolling stock and really lousy infrastructure. So it's sort of putting all your eggs in one basket didn't seem like the right thing to do at the time. And this is going back 2017, 2018, hindsight on some of those items, but that's for a completely different chat. I will put a plug in here. When you guys get a copy of the presentation, take a look. The website's actually quite nifty. They've got like a little bit of a virtual walkthrough within the inside of the LRV. Only 12 meters of the LRV because it's our mock-up. So it's a little bit of a small representation made out of wood effectively, but it looks convincingly like the real thing. But yeah, take a look. I do encourage you to take a look at the website there. So this is probably some of the sort of the big visual that everybody gets. We decided to go with a 40-meter LRV versus that 25-meter LRV that's been done in the past. The predominant reasoning behind this, to be quite honest, is passenger capacity per length. You're fundamentally reducing a lot less of that wasted space with operators' cabs and couplers and that double-ended design. So you're getting a lot more quote-unquote bang for your buck, but still keeping some of that versatility and being able to vary your train size. As you know, Transit's currently experimenting with 2-car trains, 3-car and 4-car, as well too. Having that flexibility to ramp up and ramp down service and train length is super helpful as well too. So those are just some of your kind of key stats on the bottom there, but that's kind of how it compares in terms of size. And then the 2-car train. So as you can see, our 2-car Green Line trains, kind of the opening day concept, is going to be a little bit longer actually than the 3-car current sort of Calgary 9 or S200 model as well there too. So that's the one just depicted on the bottom picture there. And so this will be the opening concept to sort of match ridership and be able to provide that capacity. And right away you can see sort of that elimination in wasted passenger space with an entire set of couplers and operators cabs completely removed from the equation there. The other piece here is the low floor design. We talked about this. This is that visual on the toe of the ramp. So you can see it very distinctly on the right here. You've got sort of that low floor notion. It's a little bit easier from that urban integration perspective because those toes of those ramps and feathering out of that urban infrastructure in terms of land takes, it's a lot tighter and more compact versus those high floor platforms. But again, trade-offs as well too. So what do we mean by low floor? And people use this very interchangeably, especially in North America. We have a full range of low floor vehicles, everything from 70% low floor to 100% low floor. So if you take a look at the graphic on the left here, you're going to see sort of that green line. That green line is showing the extent of the low floor area within the vehicle. So Calgary's buying 100% low floor vehicles. So essentially it's flat all the way through, asterisk. It's flat, but there's little ramps on the inside just to get over the axles. So you've taken the entire train and you pretend like you've compressed it. The wheel set's got to go somewhere. So those axles now protrude a little bit into the passenger area. So that affects the seating and the ramping in there as well too. In the US, you're going to see a lot more of this 70%, 85%, 90% low floor. It's all marketing, depending on what they say. But these guys, what they typically do is they have that little red area there, which is a more conventional high floor area. So you can always tell when you have to take a step inside the train, this is actually a 70% or 85% low floor vehicle as well too. And what they do is they can use conventional wheels. It's a lot more like the red and blue line on the ends. And then in the middle, it's more like a streetcar or a low floor LRV. So when they say 70% or 100% low floor, it's not the height of the curb. It's the extent inside of the vehicle. And that height of the curb, that's just going to be dependent on your manufacturer. All right, this is the other aspect of it. you guys might have seen here, and I apologize if this audio drowns me out, you guys get to see what some of my cookies will drop in terms of hats. Great Wayfair. In terms of other vulnerable road users, the one critique, and because of our system design predates a lot of the crash energy management standards, and it's not fully realized yet in the US as well either, in terms of designing the LRVs specifically for joint use within urban rights of way where there's vehicles running, buses running, pedestrians, etc. The front end design of these vehicles isn't there for an aesthetic purpose, although it gives an aesthetic piece. It's really there to deflect from collisions. So you're reducing the severity of that impact. You're deflecting, like you saw in the video there too, that vehicle, it's deflecting away the commercial vehicle that had crossed the tracks there. You can see the graphics below here from a pedestrian impact perspective. The front end is designed is to basically to push things out of the way. The reason for that is that the consequences of the underrunning are fatal. They're catastrophic. That's a big safety issue, a big safety consideration as well too, of reducing that risk. And these low floor vehicles probably do it the best in terms of reducing that outcome. The other piece too, you can see is that exposed coupler design that we have on the high floor system. You can see some of the impacts or very large impacts to those vehicles on the left-hand side of the screen there. Effectively, you've got a seat weapon hanging out in front of that vehicle, and the consequences of those collisions can be quite high. So those are things that those aren't going to continue on with the green line with that low floor design as well too. Okay, just some really quick low floor examples we were talking about. So these are all actually 70% or 85 or 60% low floor vehicles. You can usually tell just by the door positioning. So if you look towards the operator's cabs, you'll see that there's no doors there. So these are those 70% low floor vehicles, a lot like a step in the middle. Just examples from Maryland in the bottom right corner. That's on the purple line right now. Twin Cities, I think, north, the top right corner, New Jersey in the bottom left, and Portland in the top left as well there too. The reason the Americans have gone in this direction is Boeing used to actually have a standard US LRV that they were developing for a short period of history there. They quickly abandoned their insert Boeing joke here, but they did abandon that business piece. But a lot of properties then started basically following that sort of 70 to 100 or 85% or less low floor design versus Europe, Asia, and Oceania, sort of following a lot more of that tram style design, 100% low floor. So you do see a very, very different market. And so Canada, as usual, we tend to drift towards the Europeans in one way or the Americans in the other. So we've actually drifted towards the more European-centric designs, more tram-like vehicles, so all 100% low floor. So again, door positioning is able to be out by the operator's cabs as well there too. And then essentially got examples here from Ottawa, Finch West, Metrolinx, Edmonton's Valley Line, Waterloo's Island Line as well there too. So. All right, very, very quickly, CAF, this is our manufacturer for our new LRVs. They're actually headquartered in BSA in Spain. They actually date back to 1917. So they make all sorts of trains there. They've got a ton of subsidiaries that actually make parts for trains as well too. So if they don't win that train contract, chances are they're going to be making wheel sets, power units, or something, some part of that train. So they're in the DNA of a lot of rolling stock in the world as well too. So our trains are actually going to be mostly built / assembled in Zaragoza in Spain, which is about 90 minutes northwest of Barcelona, if I remember, from on a high-speed rail line, so about a 3-hour drive from that perspective. So the other big thing that we did in the LRV procurement is to try to pick something off the shelf. Nothing, no science experiments. So our vehicle is pretty much the same. Obviously, lots of subtle changes on the inside in terms of equipment to be for the Calgary duty cycles, the Calgary weather, all that fun stuff. But generally, it's very similar to these, and this Urbos 100 is effectively a model of that vehicle, and it's in all of these cities you see listed here, and it comes from everything from a 3-section all the way up to a 9-section LRV. Ours happens to be the 7-section variant. Okay, here's the latest and greatest in terms of the exterior and the livery and what it looks like on the outside. As you can see, it's 7 sections. So if you count the little boxes, there's 7 of those with 6 articulations in between. We'll just quickly go through some of the modules and some of the components here. So again, this is one LRV. There's going to be 2 of these to make up a train. So just so we're clear on that one. Okay, so there's these different modules. So there's the C module, aptly named because it's got the operator's cab. So there's one on either side of those. So it's got the operator's cab and some seating. You've got an S module, which is called that because it's suspended. So there's no wheels under that particular module. And then you have the M and the R module, so that there's wheel sets underneath those modules as well. Those has 2. And those modules are the ones that actually have the seating there above them as well. So if you kind of go left to right, you've got a C module, which is the operator's cab with seating in it, as well as for the operator. The S module, which is where our person with reduced mobility area is, and sort of a hop on, hop off section with double sets of doors. Then you got your R or your M section, which has got just a seating just above the wheel set. And then another suspended module, and then another R module, another suspended, and another cab. So basically symmetrical down the middle, and able to kind of handle all of our little passenger arrangements inside. And because everybody loves renderings, because it's really hard to see through those drawings there. So this is the inside of the C module. So that top left, you're kind of looking while standing in the back of the C module, looking forward towards the operator's cab. So you can see there, there's sets of seats. So there's those seats that are facing each other. The reason those are actually higher is they're actually built right on top of the wheel sets. And you'll see that the floor right between them is actually ramped as well too. So you have to basically go over the axles of the wheel sets and over the wheels, and that's why that part is a little bit elevated. The key part, and you'll see here, for some reason, we've put in a single leaf door in C module, and that's actually on purpose. It's a bit of a design to sort of dissuade folks where a person with reduced mobility, and this is one of those trade-offs I was talking about, from actually using that section. And the reason is that you can see because of the wheel sets, so I'll just point here with the laser pointer for those here, in the middle, that aisle is quite narrow. That aisle only narrows up because of having to deal with that conflict with the wheels. So yeah, the overall station is a lot more accessible, but the interior moving along the inside of the LRV, if you're in a wheelchair, gets way more challenging. And so we're almost discouraging those folks from getting in there. Why? Because -40, we have door problems, we have issues. All of a sudden, we don't want to strand a passenger in the front of that C module if we have a door failure and they can't make their way along the actual LRV. So a bit of a lesson learned from Ottawa. They have single leaf doors just like this. They have to put trains completely out of service if one of those doors goes out of service, because they're just allowing folks to move transversely along the train here. So. Okay, and so we make up for it here in the S module. So the S module is sort of your hop on, hop off person with reduced mobility. So there's 3 modules like this within the LRV. So effectively, you can come in from one set of doors, roll over to the PRM space, and then roll back out without having to turn around, rearrange yourself. So those of us who push those big strollers or help folks with wheelchairs, it's going to be a huge help. And that way too, if there's a redundancy or a loss of the doors, we have 2 sets. At the end of the day, we don't have to take this train out of service when we're going out in the middle of a -40 day or for whatever reason that that door fails. So this one really enhances that accessibility piece to be able to roll in, roll out without changing directions, hop in, hop out without having to make your way down the seats as well down the train. And this is the last little bit of the section here, but this is that M&R module, so the top right there, that shows you sort of that gradual slope of the floor. And so when that black space there on that top right, that's where the wheels are actually underneath the LRV and that ramping piece through there. And the M&R modules have exactly the same challenges, a little bit of that narrowed aisleway as well too, but they have those advantages of those slightly elevated seats to be able to sit up a little bit higher and be able to take a look all the way around there. So yeah, that's the Reline LRV. Again, I'll plug the website one more time. And that's the end of it. Thanks for your guys' patience. I went a little bit over there, but tried to unpack two pretty big topics there. So thanks.
Is there any questions online? Yes, we're good.
No problem.
Thank you so much, Shak.
Thank you, guys.
On behalf of Southern Alberta ITE, certificate for you. And we'll also be making a donation on the map.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
I just want to say thank you to the WSPR sponsors again for today, and as well as our volunteers who's helping out with the event. And if you have any idea for future presentations or events, or would like to volunteer for us, reach out to one of the execs here, leave your hands. Thanks again for your time, and see you next month.